Roberts kindergartners. Today we're going to do a measurement activity. Measurement is when you determine the size of something. You might want to figure out the height of something, how tall something is, or how short something is, how wide something is, how long something is. A lot of times when we measure, we use things like rulers. It's 12 inches, each one of those is an inch. Or we sometimes use tape measures if we have a bigger thing to measure. And for today, we are actually going to use a tool, but we're going to make our own tool. Before we make our tool, I want to read you this really fun story, How Big is a Foot?, which is a great little story that talks about the importance of knowing what you're measuring with when you try to make something. How Big is a Foot? By Rolf Miller. Okay. Once upon a time, there lived a king and his wife, the queen. They were a happy couple, for they had everything in the world. However, when the queen's birthday came near, the king had a problem. What could he give to someone who had everything? The king thought and he thought and he thought until he had an idea. He would give the queen a bed. The queen did not have a bed because at the time, beds had not been invented. So even someone who had everything did not have a bed. The king called his prime minister and asked him to please have a bed made. The prime minister called the chief carpenter and asked him to please have a bed made. And the chief carpenter called the apprentice and told him to make a bed. It's the king, the prime minister, the chief carpenter, and the apprentice. How big is a bed? Asked the apprentice, who didn't know because at the time nobody had ever seen a bed. How big is a bed? The carpenter asked the prime minister. A good question, said the prime minister, and he asked the king, how big is a bed? The king thought and he thought and he thought until suddenly he had an idea. The bed must be big enough to fit the queen. There he is thinking. The king called the queen and told her to put on her new pajamas and told her to lie on the floor. The king took off his shoes and with his big feet he walked carefully around the queen. He counted that the bed must be 3 feet wide, 1, 2, 3, and 6 feet long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, to be big enough to fit the queen, including the crown, which she sometimes liked to wear to sleep. The king said thank you to the queen and told the prime minister, who told the chief carpenter, who told the apprentice the bed must be 3 feet wide and 6 feet long to be big enough to fit the queen, including the crown which she sometimes liked to wear to sleep. The apprentice said thank you and took off his shoes, and with his little feet he measured 3 feet wide, 1, 2, 3, and 6 feet long, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And he made a bed to fit the queen. Well, when the king saw the bed, he thought it was beautiful. He could not wait for the queen's birthday. Instead, he called the queen at once and told her to put on her new pajamas. Then he brought out the bed and told the queen to try it. But the bed was much too small to fit the queen. The king was so angry that he immediately called the prime minister, who called the chief carpenter, who called the jailer, who threw the apprentice in jail. The apprentice was unhappy. Why was the bed too small for the queen? He thought and he thought and he thought, until suddenly he had an idea. A bed that was 3 king's feet wide and 6 king feet long was naturally bigger than a bed that was 3 apprentice feet wide and 6 apprentice feet long. I can make a bed to fit the queen if I know the size of the king's foot, he cried. He explained this to the jailer, who explained it to the chief carpenter, who explained it to the prime minister, who explained it to the king, who was much too busy to go to the jail. Instead, the king took off one shoe and called a famous sculptor. The sculptor made an exact marble copy of the king's foot, and this was sent to the jail. Let's see the foot. The apprentice took the marble copy of the king's foot, and with it he measured 3 feet wide and 6 feet long, and built a bed to fit the queen. The bed was ready just in time for the queen's birthday. The king called the queen and told her to put on her new pajamas. Then he brought out the new bed and told the queen to try it. The queen got into bed, and the bed fit the queen perfectly, including the crown, which she sometimes liked to wear to sleep. It was without a doubt the nicest gift the queen had ever received. Look at how happy she looks now. The king was very happy. He immediately called the apprentice from jail and made him a royal prince. He ordered a big parade, and all the people came out to cheer the little apprentice prince. And forever after, anyone who wanted to measure anything used a copy of the king's foot. And when someone said, "My bed is 6 feet long and 3 feet wide," everyone knew exactly how big it was. Oops. The end. Okay. It's a great story. See how the smaller feet made a smaller bed, and the king's feet made just the right size. So, are you ready to make your tool that we can use to measure? Okay. What you're going to need is a piece of paper that will fit your foot on it, and a marker or a pencil, and a pair of scissors. Okay. You might want to do it, you make one, and also maybe somebody with a bigger foot or a smaller foot than you make one, so you can compare, kind of like the apprentice and the king, measuring something in your house. Okay, first, let me show you how to make the tool. Okay, put your paper on the floor, and then put your foot in the middle as best as you can. Then you, or this a little closer for me, or somebody in your family is going to just trace around your foot. Oops, kind of as close as you can get without writing on your shoe. So you have something that looks like this. Then you're going to cut it out. Now that you have your tool, you are ready to go measure something in your house. I also did Mr. Skiffington's foot. Not that big of a difference. It might be more fun if you could get one that's a little bit, a big difference, but I don't know, let's give it a try. Okay, I'm going to use my 2 different feet, mine and Mr. Skiffington's, to measure the width of this table. Let me move the camera a little bit. It's hard to see the whole. Okay, ready? So when you measure, it's important to remember that you start at the edge. You can't just start here or anywhere. You have to get to the edge of the thing you're measuring. Okay, so that's 1 foot. I'm going to put my finger here at the end so I know where I put the foot next. That's 2 of my feet. And then I do the same thing without moving the foot. So this table is about, it just hangs off a little bit. about 3 of my feet. Right? Okay. Let's try Mr. Skiffington's big giant foot. Ready? So, again, right at the edge of the table. Put your finger here. That's 1, 2. Oh, a lot more of Mr. Skiffington's foot hangs off the edge. This much. So you can see that mine, it's almost 3 of mine and about 2 2/3 of Mr. Skiffington's. So try this with your family. Use your foot. Use your siblings' feet. Use your parents' feet. And measure some things in your house and see what the difference is between your foot and the other person's. And put it in the comments below. We'd love to see what you came up with. Okay? Thanks. See you soon.